Hi, welcome to the presentation I'm doing on creating a slide deck from an idea. Hopefully this is something that you're using on your journey to becoming a better speaker. This presentation is part of the Speaker Improvement Library from the New Stars of Data. Chances are you've come here from this page, so you know what this URL is and you've been there. But if you've run across this presentation from somewhere else or they've referred it, please go check out the Speaker Improvement Library. If you're new to speaking, there are a lot of items in here that would help you become a better speaker and a better presenter. If you're an experienced presenter, maybe you want to contribute something here and add your particular take on how to be a better speaker here. I'm Steve Jones. I'm doing this talk, and the reason I'm doing this talk is because I've had a lot of experience. Here's a list of presentations I've done over the years. I don't even know if this is a complete list, but I've built a lot of decks in that time. And I've delivered those decks. So I've been across, over a decade, lots and lots of talks, nearly 400 across the years that I've tracked and various user groups and things before this. So the point is here that I've had some experience. This is not the only way to build a deck, but this is how I do it. And I've been very successful at it. And I can actually build slide decks fairly quickly these days. So let's get started. The agenda is, well, it's coming, right? Because I want to show you how to build a deck. So how do I get started when I'm doing this? Well, I start with an idea, and I typically put this down and then I submit it to some sort of event. I don't build many decks without having a specific reason to do so. So often I think what most people end up doing here is they will create a title of some sort and then they'll do this description. And that's really what I want to do, is that I will put these things together, and then once it's accepted, you can see here I was accepted for this, I'll then move forward. Now I do have a template that I use, and I recommend this, and I'll make mine available. Because I do this often, and I typically build somewhere between probably 3 and 6 new talks a year for different purposes, I have this base deck. So you can see here I've got a title slide here at the top, an agenda slide, which looks similar to the last one, a bio slide, and then I've got content, demo, and then below summary and a few other things as well. I'll show you the template in the demo, but this is where I really start. And what I do is I customize this deck. So I make a copy, and then I put in my title, and then in the notes here, I put in the abstract and goals for the session. And the reason is I need to refer back to this as I'm building a deck and as I'm building a presentation, because this is what people are coming to see. I've kind of made this contract when I submitted that session, and often I forget exactly what I've said or what details I've included. So I want to be able to flip back to the first slide often and look at these notes and see what's there. I've also started adding the goals. Not a lot of places require goals, but a few conferences do. And I've really come to depend on those goals because they help me keep organized. Right? I think about them when I'm writing the abstract itself, and then these goals help me ensure that I'm actually doing what I said I would do. I've been to no shortage of presentations where speakers go off on a side and they forget what they said they would cover and they cover something else. And that becomes because they get excited about technology, or as they're building the deck, they move in a different direction because that's where their thoughts are taking them, but that's not what they said they would do. Now, some places will let you change this abstract if you need to over time, and certainly I would encourage you to do that if you think you have a better idea as you're building it. But you should know what people are going to potentially read in the schedule or in the booklet or whatever they get, and you should make sure that you're covering that at the level you need to and at the depth and the completeness that you said you would do. So that's where I start. And then I go to the agenda. And really what I'm trying to do here is make an outline of the things I want to cover. And so I just list them out because these are the things that that I'm thinking about as I'm building the presentation, right? So what I do is what I'll show you right here. I go with an agenda. Now I introduce myself a little bit at the beginning. I didn't do the background thing. I'll do more of that at the end actually. I showed you the idea. I'm talking about the outline now, which is where we actually are. And then these are other items that I came up with when I was thinking about how do I actually build a deck. And I took some notes as I was doing this thing, actually, for another presentation. And I kind of put these items down so they give me a flow for how things should go. If I were to show this flow to my wife or to somebody else, they could have a rough idea of what I'm covering here. and they could have a rough idea if these things fit together. And I often will do that and just show somebody, say, does this make some sense if I'm not sure? Because I want to ensure that somebody that doesn't understand this topic can follow along. So hopefully this agenda makes sense to you. We'll flesh some things out. We'll rough out sections in a practical way, go into some of the things I do in the deck with slides and notes and transitions, and give you some tips and tricks. That's really what I want to do here, is the mechanics of putting together a deck from an idea, not so much how I build a presentation or do demos or any of that. There should be other items in the speaker library for those. If there's not, then send me a note or somebody else a note and we'll get it built. So I'm fleshing out the details here, and this is the next section I want to go into. I'll talk about how I get to this point in this slide, but this is what I want to do. So I start writing. Often what I'm trying to do, because I am a writer, is I want to get a flow of the high level of what I want to do. I said I use Evernote, and so let me actually pop that up and show you what I do. So I have a notebook in Evernote. These are notebooks that you have here, and I have all these presentations that I've done over time that I keep track of here. And you can see in here that I made this demo note, but I kind of started with this idea, who am I? I put these high-level items in here, and then what I started to do is flesh them out. For example, I might say include a picture here. And what I'm really trying to do is just keep myself organized and go over the rough points I want to cover. And then once I get these rough top-level bullets, I'll add some other items inside so that I know what things I'm thinking of here. These can actually become notes for me or clues for how I deliver the talk. But I'm trying to go, is this an organized session? And as you can see here, right, I've included the goals, the abstract in here so that I know what things I'm trying to do. Actually, my goals are out of order here, so I'll fix that. Not the first time I've messed something up like this. But I'm just trying to do it. And this was actually what I started with. I copied this above, and then I started to add in these various notes in here for how I cover things. Right? These aren't slides. They're just ideas. And they should flow together in some logical order. And they should support your goals, which is one reason I try to keep my goals inside of that note so that as I'm putting those different sections in, I can make sure they support the goals. Let me pull out just that note here with this particular slide. These aren't slides because when I get to a section like this, this could be one slide or it could end up being 3 or 4 slides. I don't have those details yet. What I'm trying to do is just remind myself what are the important things for this idea that I put down. So if I said, here's the idea, here are some of the notes I have. Later on, I will actually condense this or expand this into more slides because these really are a brainstorming session for me to get organized. All right, so hopefully that makes sense to you. Please, if you've never done it or you want to know, ask for feedback from somebody else because they can help you to better understand how to put this together. All right, so let's build an agenda. Let's actually build a deck. I have a folder. I actually have it in Dropbox where I keep all my talks, and so I have all these items. If I were to go in here, I would see various decks that I've had for different purposes or customized or something else. I have this base deck here. And so what I want to do is show you how I actually would get started, or how I get started for a lot of these talks, is first I would make a folder. And let's call this New Stars. So I remember what this is, building a deck. Okay. I'm old. I tend to get used to doing underscores there. But, you don't have to do that. And then what I would say is get rid of this and say building a deck. And I don't like spaces because when I give download links and things for my deck, I want that to be easy and I want it to just work. So let's open this up and see what this looks like. So it actually opens on a different monitor. But here's my deck. Here's my title slide. My bio tends to be the same, so I leave that here. I just put title in here. Here's my agenda. Here's my bio slide. Every year, if I get re-awarded, I add this item and I change this item. If anything else changed, I just change it. For example, my title has changed over the years a few times. This used to say SQL Server MVP, so I just keep this around. And then what I have is, section, these other slides in there. And then I have at the end my contact information as well. I have a space for references if I want to put any in here, that kind of thing. So what was that? Let's go grab that actually from here. You don't want to see Visual Studio Code. Building a deck from idea, wasn't it? I think so. I didn't even have the right title in there. Slide deck from an idea. All right, so I would put this in there. Then I would grab this and I would put it down here in these notes. So typically in PowerPoint, if you've ever been there, this part is shrunk down very low. What I like to do is I will actually make this a little bit larger because I want this to be clear that these notes are here, and I want to edit them as I go along. And then I have this agenda, so let's grab my agenda, which was here. Right, and so that gives me this. I typically wouldn't have this in there. And that gives me an agenda that I have. My bio slide is here. I can hide this if it's not appropriate in some cases. Or, as I did in this case, I moved it to the end. So I'm going to move this to the end. So then I'll give you some of my credentials there at the end. And that gives me the general slide deck that I wanted to cover there. Like, that is actually what I'm trying to do, is put that slide deck together. And there we are. Let's come back. Normally I take questions here when I'm delivering things, but if you have questions, just send them. So now I want to create sections. I want to give myself some structure. Really, I have two slides. I have a content slide and a demo slide. Now, once in a while, I might change something, but really, this is an example of a content slide. It could have a series of bullets and text like this, or it could have a picture, or it could have both. But what I typically do is I use this slide bookended with my demo slide to build a section. Now, if I want to, I can remove them or get rid of them or something else. I typically don't try to mess with some of the other things that people do with PowerPoint sections. I'll show you what I mean in a minute. But what I want to really do is make this simple. I want to make this a clue as I'm talking that lets me know what's going on. In case somebody's asked me a question or I've been distracted or I'm looking at my watch, the section heading lets me know what I'm doing. And then the demo section gives me a place to pause and take questions as well as do a demo. So let's do the demo. Let's build the rest of the deck. Actually, to be fair, I'm not going to build the entire deck. But here's what I would typically do. So here's a section, DevOps, and there's a demo, right? Now this is just a sample slide I've just left in there for this. What I would do is I would use Control and I would pick all three of these and I would Control C and copy, and then I would paste. Now, I mean, that's literally what I would do. And then I would go up here and I would say, all right, start with the idea. I would take this and I would put that here. Right? Obviously, I don't want it to be bulleted. And I would say, what's the inspiration? Okay, and then I would say, show in a demo deck. Whatever thing I want to do. This is mostly to clue me in, and then I might add notes here that says switch to PowerPoint or SMS as appropriate. Open file .sql. Run the code in sections. Right, I would put some notes in there for what I actually want to do. This appears in presenter view if I'm actually presenting, but as I'm rehearsing and as I'm looking through this clues me into what's there. So I would just put those things together. And then for the next section, I actually don't fill those things out like that quickly. I would just come in here and say, all right, here's the next section available. I don't want a subheader here. I don't want a bullet here. And I would just leave this alone. I'm a little anal, so sometimes I'll just delete this. But this is how I get started. And then I really repeat this for every one of these items that I've got, where I kind of rough them out. I don't care so much as what's here. I could delete this. I usually just use a placeholder there. And I could put a note there. if I want to. But really what I'm trying to do is build these sections out according to the outline and the flow that I've built in my writing. And that is based on, essentially what I did here as I was fleshing out the details. This gives me these structures. So I put all these sections together, which gives me an idea of the amount of work I have to do, because I'll see all these sections in there. As I flip through here, if I've got these blanks in here, right, because I can see a small view, I can go, okay, well, this one needs to be done, this one needs to be done, etc. And so, if I need to do more, I would just continue to do more. And I would then find the next item in there and put that down here for the next thing I'm trying to do. And continue to copy and paste these as needed to flesh out my details. All right. So we started with an idea. We captured our abstract. We did some brainstorming away from PowerPoint, though you could do it in PowerPoint if you want. And now we're starting to get to the point where we add slides. Now, really what I want to do is start with a list of the things I want to talk about. And I may take this out of the outline that I had put together. And then I try to shrink. One of the things I've done as a writer is I try to shrink things down and make it simple, so that I've got 5 things here. I've got a little more text than I would like, but I left it in there because this is informational, not so much I'm trying to demonstrate something. But I wanted to show you an example that, here's what I want to do here, is I would probably shrink this down to, there's my header. Start with a list. That would be probably what to do. This one is good. Use short bullets. I might say use important words here. That might be the phrase I would use. I would probably get rid of this one because I could just show another slide. I don't need to say add another slide. And then I would get rid of this and say limit the list to 5. So often when I'm building these content slides, I write something like this, and then I shrink it down to make it easier for somebody to consume quickly, because people that are watching your presentation can read this slide deck in about 10 seconds and consume it. But then you want them to listen to you. So what I want to do is just put something up that they'll see, and then they listen to me. Here's an example, right, where I'd say I put a topic. In this case, the topic is, this is an example. My items support this. So my items here should support this item up here. That's what I'm trying to do. And potentially I do images. So I might say, here's an image, and in this case, I highlighted something in the image. This was actually from a presentation I did. I stole this image because I was trying to show somebody how we find a thing in SQL Monitor. But I put this together, and then sometimes I'll do what's called design ideas in PowerPoint to clean things up. But this is what I'm really trying to do. I build them quickly, right? I really just go through these ideas. I don't try to be perfect. I do leave to-dos at times. This is really the second level of outline, or the first draft of the deck that I'm trying to do, not trying to make this perfect. And so I'm not trying to spend a lot of time trying to get my ideas down, and then I'll refine them. So when I get to something like this, I would write this, and then I would refine it as I've listed here in red the next time I went through it. So let's create a few slides. So in our deck, we have this deck. We said create an outline. One of the things that I might do here is say high level. Right? Start with the high level of things that I want to do. And then I could go back to my notes. And so in this case, my notes are here. And I might say that we're going to create an outline. I'm going to put these things in here. And I'll say these are good, but maybe there's an image that wants to explain what I did. So I can come here and say, let me insert some picture. In this case, I'm just going to pick this picture just because. And I'm going to, you'll notice it's big. But over here, PowerPoint often pops this up. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. this design ideas thing. And what they do is they give you a series of slides that show some different layouts that you can pick from. And so if I were to pick this, you'll know that it's got my bullet points. This is another reason I like them short. It has my title. And I can flip through and say what looks good for my deck. And this is actually one I did for that first slide where I just said, I kind of like this black. And there's all these ideas that come up. And while this might not suit you, I do sprinkle these in sometimes to what I'm actually doing, where I thinking of these triangles, things I would never think of that, but I try some different ideas to see how it might look and how I feel. And over time, if I come back to this deck later and I want to know what's going on, I could always come back and click the design menu, and then over here on the right, there's design ideas, and it would get me ideas, potentially the same ones, potentially different ones, because these come out of Microsoft stuff. But I can easily change to say, here's something new that I want to do. And then I want to say, discuss the top level of the agenda. It's from the outline. Right? I might do this kind of thing, which actually I'm jumping ahead of myself slightly, but this is really how I build a deck, where I just put some ideas here that I'm thinking of at the time that I write this, because when I come back to it, I might not remember what triggered it. Potentially something else in my day made me think of this in one way, and the next time I come here, I might think of it in a completely different way, or it might not make any sense because I didn't go with my first idea. Right? I often try to go with my first idea because that trigger point is what will come back to me later. Right? And then I would repeat this, right? So flesh out the details. I would again go in here and I would probably grab that item and say, well, here's a couple items that I want to do here. More detail. And then I give it a high level, and then I would put some notes in there. That's essentially what I'm trying to do here when I'm creating these slides, is that I'm starting to refine the flow of how I want things to go. And I will actually come into this PowerPoint view like this and flip through the slides and see if it makes sense to me in an hour or in the next day or something else. All right, so notes. Here's a new section. Now, I rarely use presenter view, as it says here. Presenter view is where you have a view on one screen that is your slide and your notes, and it tells you what's next. Instead, I look at these notes when I'm rehearsing, these notes that are down here. They're not really a script. I've tried to use scripts there, and I don't think it works well. That could be different for you. Really, these are triggers for me. It helps me remember the context of that slide, which is what I mentioned. And that's good because the time you build this deck is probably substantially in front of when you actually are going to deliver this presentation. Or if you're lucky, you'll get to do this presentation again. And so the time is even further. And even if you're doing something very technical, when you're doing SSIS and I'm trying to import, ragged write file, I still like to have notes so I remember important things to talk to users about. Okay. And I know I've done a little bit of this already, but I might include in here something like talk about the editing of the bullets. Right? Somebody might have asked me this thing at a talk. And so when I go back later, I might just edit the note here to tell me what's going on. And these are really freeform. I don't worry about it. I'm happy to delete and change these around over time, especially even as I practice the talk. I may change these notes, but these are really reminders to me on what to talk about. If you're working in an environment where you have two screens and you can look at one while the projector is showing something else, these can be invaluable for delivering your talk. So add the notes in there that remind you of the things that you need to talk about, because those are important. Transitions and animations. All right, that's what you saw was a transition. There's a little special effect that occurs. This isn't a Star Wars or Star Trek or 007 thriller movie. This is for people that are just trying to learn something. So keep that in mind. So don't do this. This is an example of something I see where somebody is trying to present a point, and so they want to highlight the next thing they're going to talk about. And then they say, well, here's what a transition is, or here's the point I'm trying to make. And then they want to talk about something else. And so then they've got something moving. Those are bad ideas for a number of reasons. First, we can consume text very, very quickly. And for some people, they're trying to take notes or do something and they're listening. So let them see all the text at once and then go on to the next thing. I'll show you how that actually works and how you can turn that off, because there are plenty of templates and slide decks people give you that do that sort of reveal one bullet at a time. The other thing is things like animation that are moving can be very distracting to certain people, or they're just annoying when I look through it over and over. Or maybe more importantly, they're lost when somebody gets the PDF or tries to look at the deck online, because a lot of different platforms, whether that's for webinars in the pandemic era or something like SlideShare that puts it out there, they don't handle animations very well. So I avoid doing those things. So let me show you what transitions and animations actually look like. So where's my building a deck? Is this the one I was doing? Yes. All right. So there's these menus up here for transitions and animations. What that would do is if I wanted to transition into this title, or this section slide, I could come to transitions and I have all these effects here that I could pick. So I could do a comb. And what it shows you is how I went from slide 8 to slide 9 there if I applied this. Okay. Again, I'm not a big fan of these things unless you're doing a recorded thing and you have a specific reason. But you can set these transitions up and they can be different ones for different things. So you can see what's going on there as I look through different items. How do these things work? I really avoid transition. I would recommend you not do it, but there they are if you want to do that. Animation is different. So let's add a few more lines of text here just so you know. So I could do in the animation slide, if I were to say fly in, there's a preview of what's actually happening. Okay, and you see I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If I come up here to this animation pane and click it, what I'll see is that here's a start on click. That's what all those words were doing, or after previous. If you want some timing, you can play with it. And if you were to go with the options, you would see here that the direction from the bottom. So if I said from the left, then that would change. I could have sound. Please don't do that. I could change all the settings here. And I could say, how am I doing it? Like all at once, paragraphs at once, whatever I'm trying to do there. And so now they're coming from the left. You get this preview and you can kind of see the flow here as I do multiple things. How I did that other item was I put an icon in here. Let's just pick an icon. Doesn't matter. And then what I could say is for animations, first I could say, well, I want it to appear. So in my animation pane, it's going to appear. And then I might say that I want a motion, which would be, do I want to draw it or do I want something else? Do I want a neutron? You can see what it'll do there. And so I can then make this bigger or smaller, set it up wherever I want. And then if I wanted to see how this would work, I can play from here and see what would happen. Or I could go back up to play from here, and you'll see all the animation as it takes place of what would happen on your slide. Again, I think this stuff is crazy, and it is really hard to follow. So I wouldn't do transitions and animation very much. I really think it makes it complex. It ensures that you might not be able to have the same experience for somebody that gets this deck later or they sees the print. And it can be somewhat confusing for somebody that's looking at it. My recommendation is not to do it, but, up to you. All right. Tips and tricks. I had another animation there, a transition, and I wish I hadn't done that. Tips. When you put together this deck, write quickly. Write your outline quickly. Write these slides quickly in the agenda. Just kind of write it, and write a lot. So if your bullets end up being really long, that's fine. The time to edit is later when you're going back to review it. So just get your ideas down quickly in a brainstorming fashion, and then later edit them down and make them as short as possible to convey your meaning, and you can fix typos later. I know so many people get distracted when they're writing by trying to correct things and set fonts and sizes and all that. Don't worry about any of that. Just get things done quickly and then fix them later, preferably another whole session. Keep a template of things, right? So you see here, I copied and pasted some slides, and so those transitions keep appearing. And I would have to go into each one to clear the transition out, which is not what we want to do. It's not what I would want to do. So keep a template around that doesn't have any of that stuff in it, and you can work with it. I would show everything in my template by default. So all those demo slides, section slides, content slides, bio, I have all that stuff available. And then as I go through it, if I'm worried about time or if I'm worried about what something might look like, I can hide it. Now, it can be easy to lose track of what you hide, so you need to watch your PowerPoint presentation in this view, not just flip through the slides in the editor. But you can then decide whether you want to hide things. And it's very quickly to just hide things. And I think I showed you that earlier, but you can hide them. And then minimize all the complexity. And by that, things like the animation are difficult and they're problematic. Instead, what I really want to do is I use slides often to remind me of what I'm going to talk about. So the items on the slide or the picture there is as much to remind me as it is to inform the user. And my delivery is then what makes that picture or that image or that text relevant to the user in the talk, because I trigger something in my head and then I explain it to them. And that's what I'm doing there. Some tricks, and I'll show you how these work. Use multiple slides, and I have an example of that. And when I do that, I want to copy things across slides, including the position. So that way, everything goes fairly smoothly, and it looks like animation, but in a printout, it would still make sense. I try to use large fonts for the most part, so that while you might be viewing this on a screen and it looks fine, imagine you're on a projector, somebody's in the back of the room, somebody's maybe older like me. You want to make sure that they can see it, which is why I try to use larger fonts, few items on the slide, so that as it's projected in a big or small fashion, it's easy to see. And I avoid dark backgrounds. I know a lot of you enjoy coding in dark backgrounds. Nothing wrong with that. It can be really hard to see in a dark room, so I try to avoid that. The other thing is I learned to use a pointer. So if you come here and say, well, I want to use the pointer, I have the ability to say, I want to add something to the slide if somebody asks me a question. Or if I really want to, I can say, I want to make sure you don't do this, or you make sure you do use large fonts. So learning how to do these things, and then I hit escape to get out of this, is something that's good to do. It's a valuable tool for learning how to work with your slide deck as well. So, well, this isn't transitions and animations. I didn't edit that. This is actually tips and tricks. So let me go back to that deck, and let me show you an example of what I'm doing here. All right, here's that deck. What I'm going to do is, I'm going to copy a different one because I don't want the transition in there. I'm going to put this down here, and I'm going to say there's something I want to do here in animation. I want to explain something in images here. And I'm going to get rid of this, but I'm going to leave this here because what I want to do is, in fact, use this item. So I'm going to insert a picture here, for example. I'm going to just do icons, actually. I'll do an icon because that's simpler. I can pick something, okay? And what I want to say is maybe I want to do a delivery here. And what I want to do is I want to show this going from point A to point B. So I'm going to actually insert another icon. And let's find an image that says, we've got a baby. And I'm going to have it go to the astronaut. Where's that astronaut in there? There's probably a way to do multiple icons here, but I don't know what it is. Astronaut. And maybe what I want to say is that we're going to start here, and we're going to go here. And so there's two ways of doing this. Here's one way. I can say, I want to go here. and I'm going to paste this over there and say what I'm really trying to do. And you'll notice the arrows or the dotted lines tell me when I've aligned things. I can also do things like this where I say, you know, I want to align the centers of these things, right? Or align them up and down, left, right, however I want to do it. So rather than do an animation, which might say, take this and make this appear, and then make this disappear and make this appear, or move it, or whatever thing I want to do, typically what I would do is I would come over here and say, duplicate this slide. And then I would say, duplicate this slide again. Okay? So now everything's in the same spot. Actually, I'm going to get rid of this so I can show you the other technique. So I'm here. The first part of this story is that I want to say we're starting the journey here. The journey starts with the baby. Okay? And then here, actually, let's get rid of the astronaut. And let's say here what we want to show is that moving to the astronaut. So I've got this second level of thing here. And then I go, well, no, I really want to show the truck somewhere else. So what I could do here, let's just say I duplicated this slide just for the sake of time. I've got the baby there, but where's the astronaut? Well, what I want to do is I'm going to copy this. And then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to paste. And so if I flip back and forth now on these slides, the astronaut doesn't need to move because, I don't want design ideas, because it's just in the same spot, right? And then what I would do here is I might say, let me put this over here. Now where is that? If I go here, it's lower, slightly lower. So what I should have done here is paste this thing in here. Didn't do this. Let's copy. I'm doing this Control-C, Control-V. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this with my arrow key over here to where I think it lines up, right? Like I don't get the arrows here because I haven't grabbed it with the mouse, but I can do this. So now I know it's on a horizontal line along here, not this line or this line, but it's the one that's aligned perfectly like that is what I'm trying to do. Okay, that was with Zoom It that I did there. So now if I were to flip through these, you'll see that I show this journey here where the truck has moved. Okay? And potentially, maybe I want to even have the truck move here halfway. I just realized I misspelled that. That's editing later. The end. Now, as I flip through here, if you watch the images, if I were to see these three things printed, so if I saw these items over here printed, this would make some sense with the text, right? The journey starts with the baby, moving to the astronaut, we end. But more importantly, as I flip through here, watch the text. The text is all in the same spot as well. So I haven't moved it by cutting and pasting it. I can tell a story across slides. More importantly, as I have to edit things, I can easily edit them in a way that makes sense without worrying about complex animation. Because when I'm dealing with this kind of stuff, and I may have 10 or 12 of these on a slide deck, and I've seen people do this, this is much harder to edit and rearrange and do different things. This is very easy. For example, if I wanted to say, well, I want the baby to actually start over here, right? What I would do then is I would delete this baby, and I would delete this baby, which sounds horrible, but I'm deleting the icon of the baby. And then I would paste it in these spots. And so as I then now move between these items, I think I moved that baby slightly with the here. But as I move, then it would be in the same spot. Okay, and I arrowed it somewhere. But that's the idea of what I'm trying to do there to keep things simple. All right. Again, you know, as I think of something, I put it here. I just write stuff in here as I'm doing it. If I need to make this bigger, what I typically do is I will make this larger. And then if I need to check this on another slide, I would say it's 36. So I'd come here and go, well, this needs to be 36. Okay. And then I would, same thing here, is to go, well, I don't want that extra line, but I would go, this is 36. May feel like some editing there that you have to do, but this is actually fairly easy to do because I'm not doing it all at once. I would come back later and say, well, I need this to be larger, and it doesn't work. If I was trying to change something like all these titles, that can be more complex, but it's easier for me sometimes to do things across these slides and make this easy to go. I avoid things like I will get slides, for example, because I work for Redgate, they will give me slides like this. This is horrific, right? I can make it a little bit better for presentations like this, and I could bold it and maybe make it larger. But I try to avoid getting these dark backgrounds because while this looks fine here, when I present it on a projector, it doesn't often work very well. So I try to keep things like this, knowing that they'll be there. I actually had a really bad projector recently, so I went through and actually darkened these up in a bunch of, just all the demo slides real quick before the presentation, because what I wanted to do is make sure that when we got to all these slides, I could pick this and do this, and then I would go to the next one and say the same thing, and I would darken them up very quickly. So you can see how I can change a bunch of slides all at once by just having PowerPoint remember what I did and picking the thing and then just going across slides. So hopefully that helps you. Let me summarize here. Keep your idea in the slide deck. I'd keep it handy like I have it in Evernote, but having it in a slide deck is invaluable. And the reason is, if I go back to that slide deck, there's times I may be working and I want to come back and say, okay, what was this? Here was my idea and there was the goals. And so as I'm down here in this place or this place, I can go back and say, what were the notes that I was trying to deal with, or what was the presentation about? Use an outline, and then from there, build your deck. And what we're really doing here is what we would do when we were doing creative writing or in a book report or some analysis. Start at a high level and then continue to add detail at lower levels to make things make sense over time. Keep lots of notes, because when you build this deck, it will be at a very different time from when you actually deliver it. And then at the very end, like this, you want to summarize the important points. For me, the template is here, the outline is very important, and the notes are the big items that you want to have. And so I've included them here in the summary. That's all I have here. My name is Steve Jones again. I've been doing this a long time. Here's my contact information. I do often end on this slide so that people can ask me questions while they have this up on the screen if they want to get a hold of me, and I can flip around. Here's my bio slide that I have, and I'll include in the template. I usually have an image of myself of some sort, my name, my title. I have started to use pronouns here because I think that's important. I use my contact information, and you'll notice I have these visual clues here. I'll make these available in the deck so you can reuse them if you would like. And then I have just a few bullet points here of what I've been doing. This is an example of things I do for community work, where I say, here's my experience, this is something I've done, and this is something I'm proud of. If I actually pop open a different deck here, I have a base Redgate deck. So let me pop that open so you can see it, which has a different bio slide. And you'll notice in this one, I have a real image. It's fancy. I don't really have a lot about me. I just have kind of context stuff. Kendra Little actually built this, and she gave it to me. And then what we've done is all the advocates at Redgate, we've just copied this bio slide, and we hide the appropriate ones, right? So I hide Grant, Kathy, and Kendra, and then I just am the one that exists here. Okay, but I'll have this available. Again, my contact information is here. You want to get a hold of me, and hopefully this has been valuable for you. And if not, let me know. And if it has, I appreciate your thanks and feedback. And please contribute to the Speaker Improvement Library and start speaking somewhere. Hope to see you at a SQL Saturday event sometime in the future speaking, or at a larger conference that exists as well. Thanks a lot.